live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Don't you know?
This is a tough team right here.
You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know? Pump it up.
Happy Wednesday. Good to see you, Scott Patton. Welcome to the show. Darren May, good to see you as always. Matt Kirby, pinch that thing off a little bit quicker. Trent, get off the toilet over there, Trent. People who might be tuning in for the first time are a little bit confused by that. Of course, we were delayed because Trent had a bathroom emergency on the last show.
Yeah, not today. Not today.
See you, Mika, CJ Frazier. No, Trent and I are just having a little bit of a business conversation before we went live. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes here that you guys just aren't really privy to. And, Trent and I have some things that we got to work out. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that, a lot of time talking about what we might talk about here on a fan-led Wednesday. Obviously, we want you guys to guide and lead the show. And Trent, I don't want to be a negative Nancy. I don't want to be somebody who just complains all the time.
Apparently, everybody thinks that's what we're all about now, is just being negative about a 5-5 Michigan team.
We've been accused of that, of being too negative, where it's weird because CJ knows he's in here all the time. I'm also getting accused of being a guy who drinks the Kool-Aid all the time. It's like, you can't win with anybody. You're either too happy, too positive, too negative. And I think that, when you're covering a 5-5 football team, man, it's it just really is difficult to, ignore reality. It's difficult to not just be real about what's happening. And I think that there was somebody on the social media page last night that was like, it was so fun to watch you guys cover the team last year, but this year you guys are just you're so negative. And it's like, well, yeah, last year they were 15-0 and won a national.
What can you complain about when the
Right.
team goes 15-0, doesn't lose a game? You win the national championship. You win the Big Ten for the third straight year. You beat Ohio State for the third straight year,
Right.
and now you're talking about a 5-5 Michigan team.
The only thing we had was Conor Stallions last year. That was the only thing to complain about. Outside of that, it was a perfect. Yeah, and CJ gets it. It's just not fun. This is not 5-5 is not fun. And I think that, you can read it on the coaches' faces. You can hear it when the players are talking. It's about trying to stick together. It's about trying to, accomplish whatever goals are remaining on the season. But they know the deal. They know that this isn't what it was supposed to be. They know that they are underperforming. And so I think for us to come on here and to sit and spend an hour being like, okay, well, here's all the good things about what's going on. You guys don't want to hear that shit. And the people that do, I just think it's a rare breed of folks, right? I think we've talked about this a number of times. It's really, really hard to be, I have talked to Sherrone Moore's wife on the sideline. I see her routinely when I'm at the big house. She told me that she tunes into the show from time to time, which is why, you always want to be respectful of how you're talking about these things. But when things aren't going well, I think it's also disingenuous to sit here and try to paint a rosy picture when everybody sees it. Everybody sits back and watches the same thing on Saturday. And so, look, again, we are happy to go through this hour. I've got some things that I can talk about, but really I want you guys to lead the show, you guys to ask the questions. So whether or not it's, do you want to talk about the coaching staff? Do you want to talk about some of the things on the roster? Do you just want to vent about what's happening this season? Whatever it is, you guys are going to guide the show. So Trent and I are just going to wait here for the comments and the questions to filter in. Trent, is there anything that you want to say before we get started here? Anything you want to, you've got a guy that you've been in communication with. It sounds like Michigan is trending for a high 4-star linebacker. Seemed like maybe he was a Notre Dame lean for a while, but there was just a prediction that was put in for Michigan to land him. You've had communication. How big of a deal is it for Michigan to get their hands on this guy?
Yeah, no, there's been actually 2 national recruiting analysts now who have put in a prediction for Michigan to land 4-star Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, the IMG Academy prospect. it's huge, man. He's one of the top defensive targets left on the board, probably the top one for Michigan. And he's a physical specimen. Like, he can come in, I think, next year, which granted Michigan will probably still have Ernest Hausman and Jayshon Barham, but I think he could come in next season and contribute right away to this team. The kid's the real deal. Obviously, he has a big tie to Notre Dame. His brother played for Notre Dame. So I think it's going to be a Michigan-Notre Dame battle until he decides to commit on December 4th. But definitely something to watch out for. And I mean, right now, these two guys, Tom Loy and Sam Spiegelman, they must know something that they put in these predictions for Michigan.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for a lot of these guys that are committing. I mean, they're looking, you're asking yourself, well, if you're a wide receiver, high 4-star wide receiver, if you're Andrew March, why would you commit to the university? It's because you see an opportunity. You see an opportunity to come in and play right away. It's why Michigan was able to flip a cornerback from that was committed to Georgia to come play at the University of Michigan, because Will Johnson's not going to be here next year. And so you're seeing these young guys that are looking at a program like Michigan, who now is obviously willing to play the NIL game. And if you're a young guy and you're in high school and you want to be able to play right away, I don't know that there's a single position on the roster on either side of the ball that's going to be safe heading into 2025. I think everything's going to be open. Everything's going to be up for grabs. And if you're a competitor and you want to come in and have the opportunity to play right away, Michigan is certainly the place to do that. CJ from the Facebook page, what the hell is going on with my phone over here? It keeps going off. CJ from the Facebook page, he asks a valid question. And look, you know how I feel about this type of thing. I'm going to be honest here. Breaking news here. I don't have a breaking news thing. Let's see.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
That'll just be our breaking news signal. I may be having a sort of come to Jesus moment with Conor Stallions. I may be coming around. There's a chance I may have severely underestimated the genius that is Conor Stallions. CJ Frazier from the Facebook page, he asks, why won't Stallions go away? I don't know, but for anybody who saw the latest news, he is now on the coaching staff at Belleville. There's also a couple other notable guys at Belleville right now, one of them being Bryce Underwood.
Who's that?
He's just this quarterback that Michigan seems interested in to the tune of north of $10 million, reportedly. No big deal. But Conor Stallions is now on that coaching staff. And I'm really starting to wonder, is Conor Stallions playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers? Is this part of the manifesto? When this news came out, I saw people saying, like, look, this is all part of the play. Everything that's happening, from the NCAA to getting caught to the, on the sidelines, like all of it. It's all part of the manifesto. Sherrone Moore struggling, by the way, which is going to lead Conor Stallions back to the University of Michigan, coaching Bryce Underwood to a national championship. I mean, Trent, what is happening with this guy? How does he keep just popping up in these places? Do you think this is all intentional, or is it all just one big coincidence with this guy?
Like, I almost wonder if you open up his manifesto to page like 284, if it said I'm going to go coach the top prospect in all of football and try to get him to come to Michigan. Like, I wonder if it's in there, because I don't know, but man, I saw that breaking news a couple of nights ago, and I'm like, what is going on here? Stallions is coaching Bryce, calling the offensive plays now for Belleville, a team that's a powerhouse of Belleville. Like, they go get Conor Stallions to be their playoff offensive coordinator
for the playoffs.
Yeah, for the playoffs. Like, what is going on?
I mean, okay. Do you think when you're talking about NIL deals that are like $10 million, possibly north of $10 million, I don't know how much Conor Stallions is going to sway things. Do you think this helps or hurts Michigan in terms of Bryce Underwood's recruitment? Having Conor Stallions on that staff, do you think it's more helpful or more hurtful to the recruitment of Bryce Underwood?
I think it's helpful. Douglas said it on here on the comments on Facebook, but apparently Bryce Underwood's girlfriend was a huge fan of the Sign Stealer documentary, and she likes Conor Stallions. So, I mean, you put two and two together, Conor Stallions is now helping out Bryce Underwood. His girlfriend likes Conor Stallions. they're all together now. So, I mean, I don't think it hurts Michigan whatsoever.
I'm terrified that there's going to come a point on this podcast where I'm going to have to get on here and apologize to Conor Stallions. It seems to be trending that way.
I think we're going to have to get him on the podcast, and you're going to have to face to face.
If he can have a hand in bringing Bryce Underwood here. I mean, look, it's hard to make sense of it all, man. I mean, to CJ's point, like, the guy just doesn't go away. And I said this when I put up the article about him joining the staff at Belleville. Like, if there's one thing you can't question about Conor Stallions, it's his love for the University of Michigan. This guy will do anything to help the Michigan football program succeed. So if there is anybody you want having a conversation with Bryce Underwood, if there's some guy you want leading that effort, I can think of no better man than Conor Stallions. And if he can help pull off this flip, and yeah, $10 million is certainly going to help, but if he can play a role in this, I may have to issue an apology. I may have to do it, Trent. I don't want to do it, but I may have to do it. This guy is just such a hard worker, so determined to be in the mix that he will not be denied. And Trent, that's why he won't go away, because there's no quit in this guy. He is committed to living out what is written in the manifesto. And we all know what's in there. We all saw it. We saw it on the documentary, and he's talked about it. The ultimate goal is to be the head coach at the University of Michigan. And with how crazy, just batshit crazy this world can be sometimes, Trent, that wouldn't even be the craziest thing on the board. I could see it happening.
I don't see him becoming the head coach in Michigan, but I will say, I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take for him to get back in to college. I about guarantee you the dude at some point in time is going to become a head coach at the D1 level in college football, because of just how into it he is, how much passion he has for college football, for Michigan. I don't think it's going to be Michigan, but I'll tell you what, if you see Conor Stallions one day standing on the sidelines as a head coach, it would not shock me whatsoever.
Yeah, I think head coach at the University of Michigan is a stretch, but honestly, man, like I can see there being a scenario where he works his way back onto the sideline in Ann Arbor.
Possible. Yeah,
it feels like again, there's no quit. The guy is just all in. He's fully committed to it, and I think that he truly feels like he was done wrong by the whole NCAA thing. And regardless of where you stand on that, like, he has very strong feelings on it, obviously based on the documentary. And now he's on the coaching staff at Belleville, where Bryce Underwood is, and helping them go through the playoffs. And it just really is this sort of weird, amazing, exhausting story with this guy where he just won't go away. And maybe that's a testament to who he is. I mean, a lot of people would have folded, right? You get caught up in a scandal like that and you go away and you don't want to be bothered. This guy's going on podcasts. He's getting new jobs. Like, he is not going away. And, more power to him. Like I said, if he can help bring Bryce Underwood into the fold, like, yeah, I may have to issue an apology to Conor Stallions. Just a wild turn of events that I did not see coming, but that story blew me away. Jimmy Rich Jr. from the Facebook page, he asks, do you feel this is the worst it will be under Sherrone Moore, or is this just the beginning of a bad stretch of football? That is a loaded question. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation involved there, but Trent, I'm going to throw it to you. 5-5 on the year, 6-6 is kind of looking like maybe the best case scenario, but 5-7 is also a realistic possibility with the way this team plays football. Are we currently seeing the worst of the Sherrone Moore era, or do you feel that this is the beginning of what could be a pretty bad stretch?
I think it all depends on what Sherrone Moore decides to do this offseason. If he decides to stay pat, keep Kurt Campbell, keep Wink, keep all of his staff on the sideline that's on there now, he better win 10 games next season, because if not, I think things could get bad for Sherrone Moore. Now, if he makes the moves necessary, look at the 2020 COVID year. Like, I know it's 2020, crazy things happen, but it took Jim Harbaugh having that season to change his philosophy and get rid of Don Brown, go younger, get these great coaches in with him. And I think this is going to be, even though it's year one for Sherrone Moore, I think this year it might have been needed for Sherrone to go surround himself with the best coaches that he can have, the best X's, best O's coaches around him going forward. So I think this offseason is going to be very telling for Sherrone.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We've talked about this a number of times, just how critical this offseason is to Sherrone Moore's future at the University of Michigan. And to your point, Trent, and to Jimmy's question, Bradley from the Facebook page, he said, to tell you the truth, this season is like the COVID season. It never happened, which, I mean, it's happening. There's no question about it. But he says, what are the key changes that need to be made on the offense or on the off season in order for this team to get back on track and compete for championships? Is it coaching? Is it players? Do we start from scratch? Total rebuild? Yeah, I think what Trent said is true. I mean, sometimes it takes a season like this. I think if Michigan had gone out and gone 9-3 and was in the mix for a playoff spot, maybe you don't feel the need to make some changes at the coordinator positions, or you don't feel the need for a change in philosophy. And again, one of the biggest advantages to keeping Sherrone Moore around, yeah, he had been part of the staff and he had been in Ann Arbor, but it was for continuity. They wanted to keep what Jim Harbaugh started going. And I think that we've all come to realize, whatever was here before, it ain't here now. And so this is very much a clean slate, fresh start for Sherrone Moore to sort of, look, man, that bust of Jim Harbaugh in the coach's office, that thing's got to go. That thing's got to get out. Like, I think you got to get Jim Harbaugh out of the program. You got to do the whole, get rid of the whole talk to these guys thing at the end of, like, Sherrone Moore needs to take this program and do it Sherrone Moore's way. And I think that where that starts is by surrounding himself with guys who are very experienced and very successful and have been successful at the collegiate level. Now, Trent, the big question there is, if you are an elite offensive coordinator in college football, is there enough appeal at the University of Michigan to come work with a guy who is a relatively inexperienced head football coach? Is Sherrone Moore going to be able to go out and get those types of guys? Like, Sherrone Moore's got Kurt Campbell. Who does Ryan Day have? Chip Kelly, right? There's a big difference there. Is Sherrone Moore going to be able to go out and make that type of impactful hire at the coordinator positions? I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I said it this week. I think we know for sure that Sherrone Moore has to make a change with at least one of his coordinators. The last time we were on the live, I was sitting here advocating for Kurt Campbell because of what I thought he meant for the quarterbacks and on the recruiting trail. But
not
after
anymore.
I just can't do it, man. This offense is so bad. And the defense, surprisingly, against Indiana, did enough to keep Michigan in the game. Did exactly what we thought we would see at the beginning of the year, which is be good enough to give Michigan a shot. And the offense was so damn bad that they just couldn't get it there. And so when you look at this offense ranked in not just the bottom third, but I mean, they're damn near last. Total offense, passing offense, rushing offense isn't great. Third down conversions aren't great. Play calling has been an issue all year. Substitutions and personnel and in-game decisions. Like, this offense has been a disaster all year. There is no way, if you're Sherrone Moore, you can bring Kurt Campbell back. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where you want to be kind about things, but you also have to be real about things. Don't tell me that Sherrone Moore doesn't like Kurt Campbell. Don't tell me that they don't have a relationship. There's a very real possibility that Sherrone Moore is going to have to fire him. And it's not because he hates Kurt Campbell, but it's because he realizes the offense isn't as good as it needs to be. Far from it. And in order to put Michigan in the best position to succeed, you got to get an offensive coordinator in here that knows what they're doing. I don't think that guy's Kurt Campbell. It's the same when we talk about the team. Like, if it ain't working, we're not going to blow sunshine. Like, it just isn't working, and it's our job to talk about it. So, Bradley, to your question, and Jimmy, to your question, do I think this is the worst season of the Harbaugh era, or of the Moore era? I sure hope so. It has to be. Because if we get another season like this, I don't think Sherrone Moore survives year two. And you're going to have to be, in terms of what you need to do, Bradley, yeah, you got to bring some new coaches in here, particularly offensive coordinator. And you've got to hit the transfer portal very, very hard. I mean, look, this offensive line, it's not that they're inexperienced. They've got some veteran guys up front. They're just not very good up front. So I think you got to get guys in the offensive line. You got to get receivers out of the portal. You're going to have to go to the defense and supplement that. You're going to lose Mason Graham. You're going to lose Kenneth Grant. You're going to lose Josiah Stewart. You're going to lose Will Johnson. If you think you can make all that up with the guys on your roster, more power to you. But something tells me you're going to have to go pretty hard in the transfer portal to really supplement those losses. So from a staff standpoint, from a roster standpoint, Sherrone Moore's plate is going to be absolutely full in the offseason. And for everybody that wants to give him a mulligan for this year, I'm on board. I get it. Whatever, tough circumstances. But everything that happens once this season comes to an end, moving forward, is entirely on his shoulders, and he's going to have to deal with the consequences of it. Yeah,
you said it. You said it great. I think that as soon as this season is over, he's got to start looking at. Actually, he should be looking right now as to what he's going to be doing for 2025. But when you're talking about staff members, you said it a little bit ago that can Sherrone Moore go land an elite offensive guy? At the end of the day, man, it's still Michigan. I get that Sherrone Moore is an unproven head coach, but you're talking about a hungry, offensive-minded guy who's talented. I think that you say, hey, come to Michigan, run your plays here, we need you. Dude, I think you'd have plenty of coaches lining up outside the gates trying to get into the big house to call plays. I don't know who off the top of my head, but I think you can get some really, really good, young, offensive-minded guys who would love to come into Michigan and get this team turned around.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I am, and again, speculating on this. Why do you think Sherrone Moore, a guy who was the offensive coordinator last year and Michigan had success, why do you think he hasn't taken that job back yet? It seems to me that at some point in the season, if you're Sherrone, you had to look at this thing and say, okay, the offense isn't as good as we need it to be. And we know that Sherrone's got veto power. He's on the headset. He hears what Kurt Campbell is calling. Why do you think Sherrone Moore hasn't taken more of an active role or an all-out complete role in calling this offense?
I know that he claims that he's not, but do we know for a fact that he doesn't have a hand in what's going on? I know earlier in the season when they were struggling, he told John Jansen that he was going to start helping Kurt Campbell out in the play calling. And then, as the season has gone on, he says that he's not taking it away from Kurt Campbell, that Kirk's doing his thing. But I mean, as bad as the offense has looked, and you're the head coach, you were the offensive coordinator, I don't know how you don't have any sort of hand in what's going on. With that being said, I do realize Sherrone Moore was the offensive coordinator at Michigan. With that being said, too, he had Jim Harbaugh, who was also an offensive guy. He was a quarterback. He had J.J. McCarthy. He had the best offensive line to work with. There were a lot of good pieces here at Michigan when Sherrone Moore was the offensive coordinator. Clearly, the talent is lacking here, which makes coaching even more important, right, especially on that offensive side of the ball. So that's what makes me think that's why it's important for Sherrone to go get somebody that's a really, really good X's and O's guy on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan has 5 losses on the season. I would argue that, let's see, Washington. 3 of those losses at this point were coaching. Michigan could have beaten Washington on the road. Michigan could have beaten Illinois on the road, and Michigan could have beaten Indiana last weekend. But they were just out-coached. You can't tell me that Michigan doesn't have an equally as talented or more talented roster than those 3 programs I just mentioned. Washington, Illinois, Indiana. Michigan could have won those football games, but they were simply out-coached. Jed Fish, been a head coach for a while. Think whatever you want about him, but he's an experienced head coach. He's a good head coach. Brett Bielema, been a head coach for a long time. Kurt Cignetti, he might be the greatest head coach in college football history at this point. So that's the difference in those games where you do have a more talented team, and we can talk about the lack of talent or how different it is, or the difference between this year and last year. But the reality is Michigan was talented enough to beat Illinois. Michigan was talented enough to beat Indiana. Michigan was talented enough to beat Washington. But you didn't have the staff to get it done. You didn't have the guys to put that team in the right place to get it done. And so that's how you go from, potentially what? They'd be at 7-3 at this point this season versus 5-5, being in playoff contention versus being out of the picture. The difference to me Yeah, the roster is different, but it really comes down to
8-2, right? Washington, Illinois, and
that's right. 8-2. Yeah. You'd be sitting at 8-2 and you'd be looking at that game against Ohio State. But I mean, you'd be squarely in the playoff picture.
Mhm.
And so we can talk about the roster. We can talk about quarterback play, but there are 3 games on this schedule that Michigan lost that they easily could have won. And when you're looking at this team at 5-5, if we're being real about it, Trent, I mean, they're closer to 3-7 than they are 7-3. If you think about it, right? USC, I mean, if not for the heroics of Kalel Mullings, they weren't going to drive the field through the air. They weren't going to go 80 yards through the air if they had to rely on Alex Orji or Davis Warren or whoever else. Michigan hasn't proven that they can do that. I just think that when you look at this season overall, it has been such a poor performance from start to finish that you can't really point to one area and say they've improved there. They've gotten significantly better there. And ultimately, that's on coaching, man. I think I just blacked out there. I don't even know what the hell we were talking about.
well, speaking of coaching, so arguably the second best offensive player on Michigan in 2024, Kalel Mullings, sees 1 first half carry against Indiana. I mean, I don't know if there's something that's going on inside the building that we don't know about, but according to Sherrone Moore, it's because both Donovan Edwards and Benjamin Hall have practiced and played better than Mullings. With that being said, Ben Hall going into the Indiana game had 7 total carries on the season. His last one came against Illinois a few weeks back. So it's not like Ben Hall has been playing better than Kalel Mullings. I don't know what's going on there.
Listen, did you guys hear Kalel Mullings, his response to that question? Did you hear the way he answered that question when he was talking about why he didn't get carries in the many carries in the first half against Indiana? I'm going to play it on my phone. I'm going to put it in the microphone, so hopefully it comes through. But I want you to listen to Kalel Mullings on this, and you tell me if we're being negative, or tell me if this response is telling of kind of where the mentality is at. Kalel Mullings, I think it was last night, was asked why he didn't get a lot of carries in the first half. This was his response.
Well, did you get an explanation from the staff why you didn't get a carry Saturday until late in the second quarter?
I don't know how to answer that one.
But you weren't injured or anything.
Nah, I'm not. Like I said, banged up, obviously. It's a long season, hurting for sure, but not injured. There's a difference between hurt and injured. I don't know.
Come on now. Like, what is that? Does that sound like a guy who is happy with what happened there? I mean, he spent 40 seconds just saying, I don't really, what? I don't know. Explain that to me. That's not us being overly negative.
And that's one of the things that we're getting called out about. I put that story up about it and how we've turned so negative and this page is crap now. Because what do you mean?
I mean, this is a guy who established himself as the top running back on the roster, became the starting running back, and then was asked why he didn't get. Everybody was watching it, wondering where the hell Kalel Mullings was. We're starting to wonder, like, is he getting punished for what happened against Michigan State? Like, maybe does that have something to do with it? And there it is from his own mouth. There was no answer there. He didn't even know how to answer the question, but it wasn't because he was. You could just see it. I know I didn't have the video on the screen and you could hear what he was saying, but if you watch the video, it very much looks like a guy who really wanted to say, I don't know what the hell was going on. I don't know why I didn't get the opportunities. I felt like I should have been out there and I wasn't. Ask the coaches. And they did ask Sherrone Moore, and that answer really wasn't a great answer. It just seemed very puzzling to me that all of a sudden, Donovan Edwards and Benjamin Hall, they had a better what are we doing here? Like, just some real substantive answers, I think, would go a long way. And I know that that's difficult to do in today's era, pretty much of anything, in any capacity, to just give some honest, straightforward answers. But I really think it would go a long way, because when you hear something like that from your starting running back, that's a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the year, Mullings has 740 yards, averaging 5.25 yards per carry. Edwards has 513 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. I mean, Mullings has been the best back for Michigan, and you're trying to upset Indiana on the road, and you let him carry the ball one time in the first half. So clearly there's things going on inside the building. I don't know what, but something's going on that your star back only sees one carry.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people in the comments, again, we're speculating here. Ricky is saying that somebody at work told him that Sherrone Moore or Harbaugh left Sherrone at Michigan because he knew he was the weak link and took all the best coaches he had. I don't really have any thoughts on that, Ricky. I mean, that's, the 5-5 team. That's why people are saying those types of things. Rico is asking, why was Sherrone looking like he was going to vomit on the sideline with his hands on his knees, staring at the dirt? Is because the job's too big for him. I love the man, but I don't like him as a coach. Yeah, man, I think that's a really difficult thing. Like when somebody is likable as a perfect example is Davis Warren. Like Davis Warren is one of the most stand-up guys you'll probably ever meet. Just a good, solid dude in every single way. Not an elite quarterback. Like, is it okay to say that? Is it okay to acknowledge that? Does that make you a jerk, or does that it's just reality, right?
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal human being. His backstory is incredible. He's not going to be a quarterback in the NFL. Michigan needs a better quarterback option than Davis Warren. So yep. I think that two things can be true. Like you can love Sherrone Moore, think he's a great dude, think he's, he's all, great husband, great father, all of those things. But you do have to wonder, is the job maybe a little bit too big? And there's some things we've seen from a coaching standpoint throughout the season that just looks like inexperience. It looks like somebody trying to figure it out. And now there's this big narrative about like, is learning on the job acceptable at the University of Michigan? And I think when you're 5-5, people are going to ask those questions.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I keep saying it, but which is why when you are kind of learning on the job as a first year head coach, you've got to have some experience beside you. And I mean, I realize Wink Martindale coached in the NFL for 100 years, but it's his first year back in college football, and he's kind of new. He is brand new to college football because it's a different game than when he was back with Western Kentucky. It's a brand new game. And Kurt Campbell, he's a brand new offensive coordinator at the D1 level. You have a lot of newness here at Michigan. Exactly. You can't have that here at the University of Michigan. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you're going to go with a guy who's like legit a first-year head coach, you can't surround him with guys who are inexperienced. And for all, Trent, that's a perfect point. For as much experience as Wink Martindale has, and for as long as he's been in the NFL, coming back to the college ranks, that was new for him. And he had talked about that, the recruiting aspect of it, and yada, yada, yada. And for Kurt Campbell, yeah, he's not an established offensive coordinator. I mean, you're talking about Sherrone Moore challenging a play because he got the word from somebody upstairs that maybe Alex Orji's knee was down on the fumble. Like, it seems like there's a lot of people in place that are making decisions and that are helping to call this thing that really just don't have the experience necessary to do it. And that's why it's critical for Sherrone Moore to surround himself with those people in the offseason. And it's going to be on his shoulders to figure out who he can bring here and which guys are going to be open to doing it. But you have to make it happen. You cannot roll into 2025 with this staff looking the same. Otherwise, you are 100% on the chopping block. And then it's like there is no out. If I think one of the good qualities we've seen from Sherrone this season, if you can point to something good, is that there is a willingness to try. Ideally, you don't want to cycle through 3 or 4 quarterbacks in a season, but it was clear that Sherrone Moore was if something wasn't working, he was going to make a change. And if that wasn't working, he was going to make a change. I would expect to see the same philosophy when it comes to his staff during the offseason. That's going to mean making some difficult decisions with guys you've got some history with, guys you've got relationships with, but ultimately they're not the guys that are going to get you to where you need to be. Sure as hell doesn't feel like it. Yep.
How far behind am I on the comments? CJ, not far behind at all. And Mika says still 15 minutes behind.
There's not a whole lot of people asking questions. It's more comments.
No, I've actually completely caught up now. We are at the 12:42 mark. Tony Petrosky from the Facebook page, he says, Trent, dress warm. Chris and I are sending the writers to the field next Saturday. Yeah, they're not very fond of that at the University of Michigan. I think we're going to be in our typical spots on that day. Trent, this didn't really get brought up, and a lot of people, think it was blown up more. But thoughts on former quarterback former Michigan great John O'Korn,
Great. Former Michigan great.
taking a shot at the Wolverines after their loss to Indiana. For anybody who didn't see it, John O'Korn went on Twitter, and there's some debate as to whether or not this is actually John O'Korn, but if you believe it's a fake account, then you have to believe that somebody is paying money to impersonate John O'Korn, which I don't think that's the case. I was asking you, and I think I proved my case that it is legitimately John O'Korn. But John O'Korn went on Twitter and said, look, if you want to know how bad things are in Ann Arbor right now, even I was 2-0 against Indiana. Thoughts on O'Korn taking sort of a pot? Was it more of a shot at Michigan, or was it more of like a self-deprecating, him acknowledging that he was not a good quarterback?
No, I think it was definitely, well, I guess it was a little bit of both. I mean, in his, if it is his account, which apparently it is, but in his bio, it says failed quarterback. So, I mean, I think it was kind of both. Like, look how bad Michigan is, because I sucked at Michigan. I was terrible, and I even beat Indiana twice. So it was like a joke, but people definitely took offense to it. That is for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, one of those people that took offense to it was Rod Moore, captain on this football team. He fired back on Twitter and said, "Oh yeah, and what are you remembered for?" Which was,
He ended up deleting that. I don't know if you saw that. He deleted it.
He did end up deleting it. Yeah, and that's, the wonderful world of social media, where sometimes your emotions get the best of you, or maybe somebody sent him a message, was like, "Hey man, I don't think that's really John O'Korn." I don't know what the deal is, but again, I find it hard to believe anybody's paying money each month to impersonate John O'Korn. It just feels like I don't know, it doesn't feel like a realistic thing. So, yeah, I mean, CJ, I agree. The fact that Rod Moore fired back, some people, shot at Rod Moore and they were like, hey, with the season you guys are having, you probably shouldn't be saying anything. But, I think there's a lot of guys on this football team that have played a lot of football. They played it at a high level. They achieved as much success as you can possibly achieve in college football in terms of winning a national championship last year. And it can be easy to go through a season like this. If you were one of those guys that decided to come back for one more year, like a Rod Moore. I mean, dude, think about how difficult this season has been for a guy like Rod Moore. Like, you're a veteran, you come back, you get injured, you can't even participate, and you got to watch a team go out and go 5-5. I just think it's difficult, man. It's not an easy situation. And when I saw that thing pop up from John O'Korn, I was like, man, of all people to be taking a shot at the Wolverines when they're down, like O'Korn, like, I don't know about that. So.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah, there were a lot of fans who did not appreciate what John O'Korn put out on social media about it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We are now, we're only at 37 minutes. I mean, I'm not really seeing any questions. Seeing a lot of comments in here. I'm not really seeing any questions.
Chris Rico at the very bottom there talking about Colston Loveland. What did you think about his response about playing the rest of the season as long as he's healthy?
Look, I thought that was a fair and honest response. I mean, I think, it's clear that I think a lot of these guys, they want to give it one more shot against Ohio State. If they're healthy, I think they want to, go into Columbus and try to pull off the upset. And he said, look, if, Michigan has done a lot for us, Michigan has done a lot for our teammates and our families, and we're committed to this. But he was also pretty honest about the bowl game too. When somebody followed it up and they were like, does that include playing in the bowl? And he's like, well, that might be a different story. Honesty. I'm totally fine.
And he shouldn't play. Look what happened to Jake Butt several years ago. Like, if you are a first round pick, don't play in a pointless bowl game when you're 6-6. Like, there is no point in playing that if you are a legit top pick in the NFL draft, because injuries do happen. Freak injuries do happen. Let the younger guys, let your Hogan Hansons play in the bowl game to get experience.
Yeah, especially when you're coming off of a season like this. I mean, if you were playing for something meaningful, yeah, but if you're playing in a bowl game where, the ultimate prize at the end is to sit down in a chair and have them dump mayonnaise all over your head, like that's not worth risking your NFL career for. And so the fact that he was honest about it, I thought it was, those types of things are refreshing. And, I understand different circumstance. I understand he couldn't, but I would have liked to hear the real honest answer from Kalel Mullings when asked what he was asked. Yeah. You could tell it was there and he felt a certain type of way, but
yeah, he wanted to say what he wanted to say, but he couldn't.
Just didn't quite know how to say it. So it is one of those. But I'm never gonna, man. Look, for as hard as it is to get real and honest answers from people, I'm never going to shit on a guy for being real and honest. And I think that's who Colston Loveland is, man. And if they do end up making a bowl game, I certainly don't think he should play in it.
No, absolutely not.
Let's go back to Rico. I mean, he's asking the questions. Chris, do you actually believe these players like the staff? Yeah, I think they like the staff. I mean, I think they like the coaches that they have in place, but liking somebody and
Believing in them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Believing them.
Different things.
And I've said this before, and I know that it sometimes comes off as a knock on Sherrone Moore, and I don't mean it that way. But I think that this comes from experience. This comes from accomplishment. And when Jim Harbaugh would walk into a room for a press conference, you could just feel it. There was just a feeling when he walked. Same as when JJ McCarthy walked into a room. There was just a feeling. There's an energy that comes along with these people. Right now, Sherrone Moore doesn't quite have it at that level. Davis Warren does not have what JJ McCarthy had. And I think that if you're a player, there is a difference between playing for Sherrone Moore and playing for Jim Harbaugh. I think there is a bit of a difference there. Sherrone Moore is building toward that. He's building that legacy, and that's something that's going to come over time, but you don't just inherit it by putting on the skinny block M hat. It's something that you need to earn over years and years of success. And so, yeah, I think they like the staff, but I also think that I said this to you before, Trent, on one of our shows. It feels like you remember what it was like when you were in school and you'd be in class and you found out your teacher wasn't going to be there and the substitute teacher came in. It wasn't like you hated your sub, but kids act a little bit different. Things aren't as buttoned up throughout the day when the substitute teacher is there. And I feel like that's kind of what it feels like with this football team. Jim Harbaugh, the teacher, is out. Sherrone Moore is in. The kids are acting up a little bit, and I think Sherrone Moore is going to have to establish his dominance in the offseason and bring in the necessary pieces in order for this program to be successful. And so this is it, man. This is the job he signed up for. He knew the conditions and the circumstances and the NCAA investigation, and he knew a lot of it. He probably didn't know to the extent that Jim Harbaugh was going to be taking as many members of the staff along with him as he ultimately did. In fact, I'm quite sure that Sherrone Moore thought he was going to be able to hold on to some more pieces than what he ended up getting. But ultimately, this is what he signed up for, man. And this is why there are so few people that are able to do this type of job, because it is a tough business, particularly in today's college football. So, Rico, that's a long-winded answer to say, like, yeah, I think they like the staff, but liking the staff isn't enough. Like, there were guys that were ready to I almost dropped the F-bomb. There were guys that were ready to put it all on the line for a guy like Jim Harbaugh. I'm not saying they're not there with Sherrone Moore, but it feels different. It feels different.
Yeah, my personal opinion, totally speculating here, but I think every single player probably likes Sherrone Moore because he's a likable guy. Yeah. He's energetic, like which is why he's recruiting well. Right. The recruits like Sherrone Moore. With that being said, Michigan is 5-5. He's a first-year head coach surrounded with a lot of new coaches. It's probably kind of hard to buy in when you are 5-5. There's things that have happened that makes you scratch your head, like with the timeout situation at the end of the game against Indiana. Two weird challenges that Sherrone Moore has attempted to challenge, which were obviously not going to be reversed. But anyway, I think that at this point in the year, there's probably a lot of veterans, a lot of guys who have played under Jim Harbaugh for the past 2, 3, 4 years. It's probably hard to buy into what Sherrone's doing at Michigan right now. And not saying that they should or shouldn't feel that way, but that's just my opinion that, yeah, they probably do like Sherrone as a guy, as a coach, but at this point in time, it's probably hard to continue to buy into what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair. Tough, but fair. Mr. Jones from the YouTube page says, what's the outlook on Underwood? We need a spark. The outlook, it's all over the place. I think there's mixed reaction. There's people that are hopeful that he'll flip to Michigan. There's people that have like a medium confidence that he's going to stick with LSU. My gut feeling says he stays with LSU. I just don't. I think that I applaud Michigan for throwing whatever they can throw at this guy. And I think that, you know, there's some people that believe this latest NIL partnership with the company's called Passes, I believe, which again, it's another subscriber based platform. And Michigan fans have been exposed to these things where it's like, you know, Michigan fans sign up and you pay a certain amount per month and you get exclusive access to behind the scenes and videos and all this shit. Taking my personal thoughts and feelings about those types of things aside, what Passes also did was invest, I believe, 7 figures to Learfield, which basically controls the media rights to Michigan or whatever. So 7 figures up front, which is millions of dollars, which I think is supposed to go towards some NIL efforts, particularly with a guy like Bryce Underwood. So I think that I give Michigan a ton of credit for being willing to go all in and go after this guy and give it everything they have. And I think that I don't think it's going to work with Bryce Underwood, but I do think it should give Michigan fans some confidence that, hey, if they truly believe the guy is out there, they are willing to do it now. It wasn't really the case with Jim Harbaugh. He wasn't typically a big fan of that type of thing. But with Sherrone Moore running the show at this point, it does seem like if they think there's a guy out there that can be a program-changing guy, they will do whatever they need to do to get the funds ready and available to get a guy like that in Ann Arbor. And that's something that you should feel good about as a Michigan football fan, regardless of whether or not you like NIL and what's going on with the college game. That's a whole different discussion. The fact that Michigan has been reluctant to play the game, and quite honestly, boosters have been reluctant to contribute. And that came from Ward Manuel's mouth. He said, I am having trouble getting boosters to pony up because they still don't really believe in this whole sort of philosophy. The fact that these companies can come in and pay 7 figures to be a part of Michigan, and, you know, that can go towards NIL efforts. You got to be happy about that if you're a Michigan fan, because that's the way in today's college football you're going to get those program changing athletes like a Bryce Underwood. But Mr. Jones, I don't think it's going to pay off in this particular recruitment. Trent, what do you think? Am I off on that, or do you think there's a good chance they flip him?
I think there's a chance they flip Bryce Underwood. If I had to put money on it, I would say that he's going to stick with LSU. I mean, just for the fact of he's been on record saying that he would like to play in the South. LSU has developed quarterbacks where Michigan really hasn't, other than you look at JJ McCarthy being a first-round selection. But what I think that the key here is that Michigan is no longer afraid to play the game. Like, they're doing the same thing that LSU and Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama and all these other top schools have been doing. They're trying to pay these top prospects to come play in Ann Arbor. If there is any silver lining whatsoever in this 5-5 season, I think it's that. I think that Michigan needed a season like this to go all in, bringing top talent to Michigan, because clearly Jim Harbaugh isn't here anymore, and he believed in developing players. Where you have a new young head coach who needs these key pieces to compete, and I think that it was needed. Whether Michigan fans want to buy into that or not, I don't know, but I think that a down year after 3 great seasons made it possible for Michigan to play the game.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And just going back on what I said again about those subscription-based sites, like I'm not trying to shit on anybody for a business idea, because people are, if you're smart in the business world, and I think that this I can't remember what her name is, but the owner of Passes, I think her net worth is like $500 million or something like that. So she's doing very well for herself. There is an opportunity for business people to come into the NIL market and make money, but Michigan's NIL program should not be completely dependent on fans ponying up through monthly subscription fees. The big donors that are in Ann Arbor, the alumni who are worth millions of dollars, those are the guys that need to come to if you're Sherrone Moore and if you're Ward Manuel, you need to go out and you need to get those guys and bring them and set them down at the table and really make some shit happen. And so, again, I respect the businesses that are coming in. I just think fans are over the subscription. I mean, dude, how many subscriptions are you going to have monthly to Michigan? How many do you have right now, Trent? How many Michigan sites are you subscribing to?
0.
Yeah, 0 for me too. And I think probably the most people in the comments here, vast majority of the Michigan fans, how many of you guys are right now on a monthly package for some sort of like subscription based, give you extra access to what Michigan players are doing? I just don't think that's the way to do it, man. I think people are turned off by it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're probably right, but there's also there's going to be plenty of fans who do donate and try to have that extra.
And there will always be
Yep,
that people,
yep.
just like there's people that piled into a damn RV and went to a
Yep.
Belleville game and we're shouting Mr. Brightside in the stands. I mean, there are always going to be people within the Michigan fan base that are willing to pony up, and God bless them. But the reality is the donors are the people that really need to drive the bus on this thing, so to speak. Shannon Chu from the Facebook page says, do we give Jaden Davis a chance if we go to a bowl game? I'll say this. If I don't see Jaden Davis, if Michigan qualifies for a bowl game and I don't see Jaden Davis touch the field in the bowl game, I'm going to lose my shit. I'm just going to lose my shit. And for anybody out there that thinks I've been too negative, complaining too much, just wait until they don't play Jaden Davis in a bowl game. If there is one time to do it, it's in the Meineke Car Care Bowl,
Chris,
whatever the hell's going on.
I got an email this morning. So Michigan is right now, they're favored to go to the Pinstripe Bowl in Bronx, New York. So that's probably potentially the bowl game Michigan will be playing at this year.
I don't mind a trip to New York.
And just like Colston Loveland said, if they do make it to a bowl game, that's going to be a different story whether he plays or not. And I'm sure Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and all those other players feel the same exact way.
Trent, do you think Davis Warren sets out the bowl game?
No, but I do believe that if you are Sherrone Moore, that is the time that you play Jaden Davis. He's going to have a whole nother month to prepare for this bowl game on top of what he's already done. Play him at least a little bit in the bowl game and see what you have.
That has to be like, fine. You don't want to play him in the regular season. You're still trying to achieve some goals here and there, whatever. Like, okay. But if you are 6-6 and you're in the Pinstripe Bowl, you have got to play your true freshman quarterback who is a borderline 5-star guy. You got to give him, I don't know, 2 series. Give him a series. Like, give him a play in a series. But Jaden Davis has to touch the football field and throw the damn football. I just don't think that's too much to ask. If we don't see it in the bowl game and Michigan makes one, then I think it really is fair to start. We're already questioning whether or not Jaden Davis is the guy. Dude, if we don't see him make an appearance in the bowl game, there's real questions about Jaden Davis heading into next year.
Yeah, because let's be real. Alex Orji, Jaden Denegal, and Davis Warren they're not going to be the starting quarterback in Michigan next season. There is only one guy on this current roster that could be. Likely there's none, but there's only one that could be, and that's Jaden Davis. So if you don't play him in a bowl game when you're 6-6 and it means nothing if you win or lose, like that tells you a lot. That tells you everything that you need to know about Jaden Davis going forward at the University of Michigan.
Yeah. Jesse from the Facebook page, he says, why do you think Sherrone Moore challenged those 2 terrible challenges over the last couple of weeks? I'm sensing Sherrone is lost a little bit. I mean, he flat out said somebody from up in the press box told him to challenge it because they, with the Alex Orji thing, the fumble there, they thought Orji's knee may have been down. And so, Jesse, I really think it's a matter of Sherrone's got people around him. It's a combination. Sherrone is a first-year head coach. Things aren't going well, and he's got people around him who aren't necessarily the most experienced or the greatest at their positions. And so it really is a combination of people just trying to figure it out. And you're seeing that play out on Saturdays, that for the most part at this level, just trying to figure it out ain't going to get shit done. And yeah, you can beat Arkansas State. And let's not forget, Michigan didn't look dominant against Arkansas State. They give up a lot of points in the second half. They let Arkansas State get back in the game. The most dominant Michigan has looked all year was in week 1 when they, what was it, 30-10 over Fresno State?
And they weren't even dominant in that game.
And that was the most points this offense put up all season long. From that point moving forward, they have struggled. They struggled against USC, who isn't good. They struggled against Minnesota, solid team. But I mean, they've struggled against everybody. And so what you're seeing play out on Saturdays is the result of talented roster, but an average coaching staff making a talented roster look worse than what they really are. I really do think that's what it comes down to. Yes, some of this falls on the players, but I've said it before. Like, a great coaching staff can make an average team look good, but an average coaching staff can make a good football team look bad. Yep. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's an average coaching staff making a good football team look bad. When I look at this roster, there is talent there. There is no way that this team should be 5-5. but you are what your record says you are.
Yep.
And if I have to put it on players or coaches, this one I'm putting on coaches. I think coaching is why they lost to Indiana. I think coaching is why they lost to Illinois. And I think coaching is why they lost to Washington. There's 3 games that could easily have gone in the win column, but you didn't have the coaching to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only 2 games where if you look at the rosters, Michigan might not have been more talented than Texas and Oregon. But every game, other than those 2, Michigan has been the more talented team. And you're right, it comes down to coaching. I mean, I get that players you can place blame on players, and rightly so. They miss tackles or they don't execute as well. But coaching, I agree with you. Coaching has been the main reason that this team has failed the way it has this season.
Would agree. Yeah, Tyrone, yeah. You just, it's not that you're not working. It's not that you're not getting the work done. It's just things are a little bit different when the substitute teacher is in for the day. Rico, one more for Rico. Will Jaden Davis stay here just to lose his job to a transfer QB? I mean, again, speculating here, but I don't know. I don't get the sense that Jaden Davis is interested in. My gut says he doesn't want to sit for another year, but dude, look, I'm done. I'm done with the whole. I'm not even going to do it. I'm done with the Jaden Davis thing. Play him in the bowl game, or else I'm going to lose my shit.
Jaden Davis is the new Conor Stallions.
I'm so tired of speculating on, well, why did he play? What do you think? I don't know. So let me see the kid on the field. Can he throw? Just show me something from Jaden Davis. I'm tired of speculating on that whole damn thing. You're right. It is the new Conor Stallions thing. Golly.
Now we love Conor Stallions around here, and we can't talk about Jaden Davis.
You recruit a highly rated quarterback, and then it turns out you don't have a damn quarterback on your roster, but you can't go to that kid. You can't play him because of some promise that was made. And I don't even know if that's true. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I won't do it. CJ says, stop asking fans to contribute. That's the thing. If fans want to contribute to NIL, I think that's great. Right? I think a fan should be, if you want to pay site to get some extra content because you're just a Michigan diehard, I think it's cool that you have the opportunity to do that. But how many of these subscription-based, and that's the other thing, some of these are get exclusive behind the scenes to pregame content and postgame content. I don't want the guys doing TikTok dances in the pregame and the postgame. At some point in time, I just want them to focus on football and not have another subscription-based thing where they've got to be on their phone or online giving people content. They're there to play football. They're student athletes, and I appreciate the behind-the-scenes content, but I don't want to see these guys doing dances pregame. I want to see them locked. I mean, put a camera in the corner and just let me see them locked in. But I don't need to be hearing from the quarterback pregame because I paid a subscription on. It's too much. You're talking about college students. They got class, they got practice, they got games, and they've got obligations now with NIL where they got to go out and take pictures in front of their cars because they got a dealership partnership sort of thing. And now they're paid sites where they got to get pregame and postgame and signed apparel and autographs and all this other shit. Dude, we are so far away from what it's really supposed to be about, which is what happens on Saturdays. That's it. And if
pretty soon they're going to have a camera following them around so you can see what they do in their day-to-day lives. Where they eat at, what they do.
You're going to have camera and dude, holy shit. I probably shouldn't even say this because this is like a multi-trillion-dollar idea. But every helmet should be equipped with a camera right in the front of it. And you can put on your little virtual thing and you can select which player do you want to be in the game. And you can actually watch the game from Davis Warren's perspective.
Oh, boy.
You can just get sacked all afternoon. You could be running for your life all afternoon as Davis Warren. But tell me that's not a great idea, though.
No, that's a pretty solid idea.
You want to watch it from Colston Loveland's perspective. You could flip through the players and be like, I want to see what happened. You go through the replay and watch it from their perspective. Coach's cam on the hat.
I think you're onto something, actually.
Be Sherrone more. Everything should have a little mini camera in it, and you should just put on your thing and select who you want to.
How much would that cost?
I don't know. It's a subscription base. Full circle. I can't do it anymore. I can't. I got to go work on this business plan. I just came up with $1 trillion plan. Trent and I will be back on. We won't be back on Friday because thank God it's a bye week, but we will be back on Monday to talk about the important game against Northwestern. Until then, protect your mental health. Get away from the computer. Go spend time with your family. We'll see you on Monday. Appreciate you all.
He's calling a cab while he's having a smoke.